So welcome to Unit 3. This is on sensation and perception, as well as motivation, I think is in here. As well, sorry, a little bit confused on exactly what is in this unit. Uh, so we're going to talk about the difference between sensation and perception, because a lot of it gets confused. Sensation is taking in information. Perception is once that information comes in, then we organize it in a way that makes sense to us. So even though we could all be taking in the same sensation, our perception may in fact be different. Pardon me for that. Sensation, again, is a process by which our sensory receptors and nervous system receive and represent stimulus energy. We take in nearly 2 billion bits of information every second. And when I say bits, think of every little thing that you see here, every little pixel of every little color of every little thing, and your brain takes it into all these little tiny bits of every cone and rod in your eyes. The millions of those, break it down into millions of little pieces and then put them all back together in your head, plus everything we sense on our body, every skin cell, all the stuff that we take in, and that energy, everything I hear, everything I taste, everything I smell. There's 2 billion bits of information coming at us every second. That is our sensation. If somebody offered you super senses, you could be Superman and have super senses where you could detect everything going on. The question is, would you want it? And the answer is probably not. Because if you had it, you could smell everything. And we don't want to smell everything. We could hear everything. I could feel everything. There's some things we just don't want being aware of. And when we are aware of it, it becomes our perception, where we take what's going on, we organize it, we interpret it into these particular things. So we combine what our senses are taking in to what we already know to be true, which is our past experiences and everything else. For example, I don't know Spanish. So if somebody is speaking Spanish and they're like, ¿Cómo se llama? Y tú? Or I don't even know if that makes sense. What is your name and you? I don't know. But again, I don't speak Spanish. So when someone's going, hey, casa de Pepe, or whatever, it's just words. Unless I heard it on Dora the Explorer, I remember it from the 10th grade. But someone next to me who speaks Spanish, they're hearing a story, they're hearing a description, they're making a mental image of the words that are coming to them. So even though we're both sensing the exact same sounds and reverberations going into our ears and being sent to our brain, I don't experience it as language. If I go to an art museum with my wife, we both sense the same colors and whatnot of the painting, but due to my perception being lacking about art, I'm not really perceiving anything. I look at a lot of art, the art museum, I'm like, a 7-year-old could do that. I could do that. And of course I couldn't. When we take a look at things like this gets a little bit screwy with our sensation and perception. There's nothing moving on this screen, but it gives us a little bit of a perception of movement because our eyes are going all over the place there. When we take a look at something like this on a screen, it seems to be sort of wavy going on, but there's no wave occurring. But because we see this as dark and we see that as bright, we take this, what is a flat image, and we twist it so that the one image is in light and the other is in dark, it's in shadow and whatnot. And as we move our eyes around, it gives us a sense of 3 dimensions, even though they aren't there. The fact that this red seems a little bit brighter, this red seems a little bit darker, because we take what surrounds it. Context is everything when it comes to color, and color we'll talk about down the road. When it comes to size, context again being everything. This orange dot looks a little bit bigger than this orange dot, even though they're directly the same size. I don't know if directly is the right word, but you take a look at what's surrounding it. Since this is surrounded by big dots, it seems little. Since it's surrounded by the little dots, it seems bigger, but they're the exact same one. This, a very, very similar thing. And we talked about that a little bit before when we talked about motivation and we talked about eating. I don't think we've talked about motivation yet. we'll talk about this down the road with motivation. Uh, and stress and whatnot. But when we talk about eating, a lot of restaurants, what they'll do is they'll give you, if you're trying to lose weight, they'll give you a small plate. So you think that you're more full, as opposed to eating this. I'm not going to think I ate as much, so I'm not going to feel as full. Restaurants that are, all you can eat buffets, they'll give you tiny plates, so it seems like you're eating a lot and you'll be full sooner, as opposed to restaurants that charge per plate, they'll give you bigger plates so it feels like you've got room for dessert, and you'll order something else later on. The perception of this, it looks like a three-dimensional object coming straight at my face because I assume that all these squares are the same size. This one's bigger, that one's smaller, this must be closer. When in fact, in reality, two dimension, they're all the same distance from me. Same thing here. All right. So when we process information, there's two ways that we do it. It's what's called bottom up versus top down. Bottom up processing, we're all doing the same. Okay. If a phone rings, we all hear it, we turn our attention to it, whatever. Somebody comes in this door, we'll all look over in that direction because there's a stimulus moving and we sense something. We react to movement, we react to a smell, we react to a sound, whatever the case may be. When we hear police sirens, or sort of get nervous and go around, whatever. Most all of us react the same to bottom up processing, a loud noise. We turn our attention to it. That sensation is coming in. We all process it sort of from our gut. We'll all react the same way. That's bottom up processing. Now, top down processing is a little bit different. Top down processing is where we take our experience and our knowledge, and that's going to impact how we react to something. For example, if we hear a phone, we all may react to a phone the same way. If I hear a phone playing Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic by the Police, I know that that's my wife calling. So I'm going to react differently to that than the ring of something else because I have connected that song to my wife, or the little sort of a sound when she texts. I respond to that differently because I've associated that with this particular thing. So again, experience, knowledge, things that we know, how we perceive things, language, slang, racism. This is all based on top down. So I'm using my brain. What I've experienced is going to impact how I take in these things. Context is everything when it comes to perception. When we're taking stuff in. For example, we take a look at this word right here. This is the word the, right? Then I take a look at this word, and this is the word cat, where suddenly it looks like CAT, but this is the exact same sensation as this, but because of the context and what's around it. Here it seems like an H, there it seems like an A. I look at this as it's ABC. I take a look at this, it's 12, 13, 14. This is the exact same simulation as this, but down here it looks like a 13, up there it looks like a B, because context is everything. So again, top-down processing has to do with experience, using my mind. Bottom-up processing is my gut. Now again, we go back to the police sirens. If you're someone who has an inherent fear of the police, because of your race, because of your experiences, because you've gotten a lot of tickets, whatever, your reaction to getting pulled over is going to be different than somebody else's reaction who has a much more positive opinion and has had generally good experiences there and hasn't gotten a lot of tickets. Now, our divided attention, we have very select attention. We focus on a particular stimulus, but again, we can only pay attention to a few things at a time. And we'll talk about this more when we get to memory. We can only consciously pay attention to 6 to 9 items at a time, even though 2 billion different things are coming in, which is why we group things and all these other things. This is why we truly can't multitask. When we're talking on the phone while we're driving, as long as it's a phone conversation, then, how was your day? And as long as I'm driving to someplace I've always driven before, I can do both at the same time. But if it's suddenly raining or I'm lost or I don't know where I'm going, I'm like, honey, I'm gonna have to call you back later. Or if I'm talking to my wife and I'm driving to where I'm normally driving and she's like, hey, I want a divorce. I'm like, whoa, I need to pull over. I need to pay attention to this. I need to focus on this. So when it comes to very simple, mundane, everyday tasks, of course, we can chew gum and walk at the same time. Neither of them take a lot of attention. I don't have to go chew, 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 left, right, pressure, lift, there's not thought there. But when it comes to things I consciously need to do, I can't do two things at the same time well. When I'm trying to do multiple things at the same time, I'm giving up an efficiency in doing it. It's why when people are like, I study better when I'm listening to music. No, you don't. You may enjoy studying more when you're listening to music, but unless that music is playing while you're taking the test, it ain't going to work out. And especially if the music has lyrics, it's not going to work. When you're at a party, you can't focus on every conversation. You got to focus on one. Now, it's very possible if somebody says your name someplace else, you're going to pay attention to that, which is the cocktail party phenomenon we'll talk about down the road. We are so bad at multitasking. We're terrible at it, but we keep trying it. And the reason why is because every time we complete a task, we get a little hit of dopamine. So the more tasks that I can complete, the more hits of dopamine that I'm getting. And I get excited about new things. Your phone rings and it's like, oh my God, it's a text message. Susie broke up with Johnny. I didn't know that. It's exciting. That's new information. Dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. But when I get the text, it's like, hey, Drew, Susie broke up with Johnny. Man, I already knew that. And we're a little bit disappointed. There's a little bit of a withdrawal because I was expecting this hit. Now I'm not getting it. So we want to do a lot of things because a lot of things are exciting. But the more things we do, we're not good at it. Here's an example of it. Take a look at this video right here. This is on YouTube. I'm not sure if this is going to come across on Zoom as well, but let me go ahead and play it. It's an awareness test.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Okay, so we're looking for how many passes does the team in white make? There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Keep going. Now they're looking for an answer, and your answer, of course, is?
The answer is 13.
There you go.
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Reverse it. So ignore the guys in white passing. Ignore these guys. And now if you look right in the middle there was a bear going across. And a lot of people will go, well, he wasn't at the beginning. So let's go back to the beginning here. Oops. And there he is back at the beginning of the video. So the question is, why do we not see this black bear in the middle of everything? Because we're so busy paying attention to, your brain said white shirt ball, white shirt ball, white shirt ball. And as you looked at white shirt ball, white shirt ball, white shirt ball, focus here, focus here, focus there, even though your eyes took this in, you ignored it because it wasn't important. You didn't pay attention to it. You saw it, but you didn't pay attention to it. And those of you guys, by the way, who saw the bear, you lost track of the shots that were being taken. You're going 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. What? Why is that there? And then why you're focused on this guy in this costume coming across, you, by nature, are going to lose track of the passes that are being made. We can't do multiple things at the same time. And this is one of the reasons that teens get into so many car accidents. You're a new driver. You're not experienced to driving. Usually when teens get in accidents, it's because somebody else is in the car. Rarely do they get in accidents by themselves. There's usually somebody else there. And when people go, well, it's okay, I had a hands-free device. It doesn't matter. It's not about this versus this. That's no big difference. It's what's coming in here. Cell phones, car radios, people taking selfies, making little videos. Here I am doing carpool karaoke. Pay attention to the damn road, especially when you're a teenager, because you don't have a lot of experience driving. This is why your car insurance is so high, not to mention the fact that you have this teenage sense of inferiority. Hey, I haven't gotten into a car accident yet, hasn't killed me yet. Let's go ahead and do this. And there's real risks to multitasking, by the way. If you take a look over here, there's harm to the brain, proven reductions in gray matter, specifically in cognitive control and emotional regulation in people who are constantly multitasking. It can lead to memory problems. A 2016 study found results with harm to both working as well as long-term memory when you're constantly trying to multitask. It can lead to increased distractibility, decreased ability to determine between things that are significant and those that are not. You have a lack of focus when you're trying to multitask. It can make us walk into traffic. 20% of teen pedestrians accidents involved a mobile device because you're paying attention. You walk right into the road. 10% of adult cases. Teens are more susceptible to this because teens have a lack of impulse control compared to an adult. Hurts not only your grade, but also the grade of those around you. They did a study of people that were in a lecture hall that had their computer screens open and were surfing the web. Not only did their grades go down, but the grades of those around them, others around them, were distracted by their device. We're naturally distracted by things that are moving. That's why when you're having a conversation with someone and the TV's in the background, you keep going, because you see the TV moving. And we want to do both at the same time. It can harm your current relationships. Technoference reduces satisfaction because people are like, You can't do them both at the same time. Put down the phone, go on your date. Can increase chronic stress because we're constantly being bombarded with information that we can't keep straight. It increases the risk of depression and anxiety. We're more likely to report symptoms of disorders because we're always comparing ourselves to other people. What am I doing? What are they not doing? Has anybody responded to my Twitter thing about my kitty cat? Whatever. Makes us less productive, makes us less efficient because, again, we're doing two half-assed jobs instead of one good job. Focus on one thing, do it right, complete it, go to the next thing. Multitasking is really, really bad for us. Okay. Some other stuff there on multitasking and driving if you want to take a look at that. Inattentional blindness. This is due to the fact that what you guys just experienced there with the moonwalking bear. Our focus attention, we fail to encode visible objects that are in fact happening because, again, my short-term working memory can only handle 7 to 9 items for about 30 seconds. I got to do the next thing. And usually when I'm taking in items, I'm taking in chunks of things. I'm taking in this office, not every little detail of it. I am in my office. I'm not looking at, okay, it's a pinball machine. I'm not looking at every letter on the side and every little pixel of color and it's a bunch of Simpsons character. I'm not looking at every one individually. I put them into groups. Even when we're experiencing events, we don't encode everything. And sometimes that's why we feel like some things never happen. How many times have you driven to school and you're walking in the building, you're like, I don't remember that drive because there was no reason to put anything away. When you talked to your friend this morning, what color were their shoes? I'm sure you noticed them, but you didn't really notice them because it wasn't important to put away. If they suddenly had, monkey feet slippers on, well, that would be unusual and we need to take that in. This is the difficulty with eyewitness testimony because a lot of times details weren't noticed. When they say, what color of shirt was the defendant wearing? You weren't doing a clothing inventory that day. All you saw was the crime taking place. Because, again, our attention is about the size of, if you stretch out a nickel or a quarter, and that's about our good attention, and everything is just moving that attention around. When we focus on something, the stuff on the outside is inattentional blindness, and this is where we just miss things. And magicians are great at this. Pickpockets are great at this. They'll grab you on the shoulders. You go, what? And they pick your pocket over. Well, if you had a pocket on your shoulder, but they'll pick your pocket over here as you're paying attention to that. Look at this card, and they slip something in your pocket, whatever. Our focus is very, very limited. Here's an example of inattentional blindness. If you take a look at this, what you see is a solid dot here, a solid dot here, a solid dot here. And notice your eyes are going from here to here to here. And then you go to here and you got a blinking dot, solid dot, solid dot, solid dot, blinking dot. A bunch of blue crosses coming around and around. Okay, so we take that in. So those are all these little individual things. Now let's take this in as a whole. Back your eyes up and only focus on the green dot. Put all your attention on the green dot. Focus on the green dot. Now, as you are focusing on the green dot, outside of your quarter, outside of your peripheral vision, what is starting to happen to the yellow dots? And you will notice that they are disappearing. And the reason that they are disappearing is because they're part of your peripheral vision, which is weaker. And you're so focused on this little dot and all these blue X's going around. You're so focused on this blinking dot that suddenly your brain is going, yellow dots aren't important. And since your brain says they're not important, you don't see them. There's no reason to take in that stimulus anymore because it's not important. There's no reason right now for you to take in the stimulus of your sock pressing against your pinky toe because it's not important, but it's there, but your brain's not taking it in. It's the same thing with the vision of these yellow dots. It's not important. I'm not taking it in. I'm not paying attention. Therefore, I don't see it. So a lot of things right in front of our face we don't see. And sometimes it happens with changes. You know, if I changed one little thing in the back of this room from the lecture yesterday, you probably wouldn't notice. If one of those figures wasn't up there, that was up there yesterday, you're probably not going to pick it up because you just assume it's the same as the other lectures that I was in here. We're not going to notice. This is why sometimes when my wife comes home and she says, "Do you notice anything different about me today?" I'll go, "No, I don't." She'll be like, "I got a manicure. I'm sorry, I wasn't noticing your fingers today. I didn't notice your haircut today. I don't notice these little things." You know, you mistake your waiter for another waiter because all my waiters are dressed the same. You know, a lot of times we don't notice these little changes. If I had two students who were suddenly sitting in different desks, I just assumed they would be sitting in the same desk, and there's no reason for them to switch. And I probably wouldn't notice if I was in class and I was looking on this side of the room and I suddenly look back over here and two students switched hats. I wouldn't notice because why would they switch hats? It doesn't make sense that they would. And there have been studies on change blindness that have done where they go up to a guy. This guy is a Confederate. He goes up to this guy and asks him for directions to something. Then they're distracted by whatever and they switch it for another guy. And this guy doesn't notice that this is a different guy because they're both white dudes, you know, and you just sort of group them all together. Now, if this was a Black, Hispanic, or Japanese person, probably would notice the difference. But for the most part, we don't notice changes because why would there be changes? And again, this falls under the expertise again of illusionists. They draw your attention in one direction and then they make the change in the other direction because we're not expecting it. Take a look at this picture right here. See this picture? Got all the little things in it, all the little parts in it. I think we're taking all the little information in. It's great, fantastic. Take it away. Here's the same picture, except there's about 5 changes in it. What are the changes from the previous picture? It looks pretty much the same. We got a bird, we got a worm, we got a rabbit watching, we got a bird watching. It's a sunny day. It's kind of all the same, right? Well, there's some differences. There's a little dot on the flower. There's a missing cloud. There's a smile on the worm, apparently pleased to be eaten that early in the morning. And you're missing a leaf. And again, these are all tiny little things, and we miss this, but we think we're taking in and we're processing more than we are. We're taking it in, but we're just not processing as much as we think we are. This mask is another good example of it. When you take a look at this mask, you start it over again. You make an assumption that this mask is coming towards you, but it's actually the back of the mask. There's the front of the mask coming towards me. So why does the back of the mask look like it's coming towards me? Because we assume faces come towards us. That's how faces work. It doesn't make sense that it would be concaved. Doesn't make sense. So I don't see it that way. I see it as coming towards me. And here's another example, a little Charlie Chaplin there going a little bit faster. I don't expect a face to be concaved. So why would I perceive it that way? So when delivering information to the brain, the sensation is the activation of our senses. This then gets transduced into energy. And then once it's transduced into all these little pieces, our brain puts the pieces together and that becomes our world. But that's why my world is different from your world. Because all this, even though we're all sort of taking in the same senses and everything else, what we put together is a little bit different. And sometimes even how we take it in. When you've got somebody with depression and they see a sunshiny day, you know, and the warmth of the sun and everything else, sometimes it doesn't get to their brain in the same way that it gets to my brain because of some dopamine, serotonin, neurotransmitter thing off. So sometimes we're not sensing it necessarily the same either. And of course, as we talked about before, all of this goes through the thalamus with the exception of smell. So all of this is the study of what is called psychophysics. And this is the study of the relationship between the physical characteristics of the stimuli and what our psychological perception of it is. Some we are blind to. We can't see microwaves, we can't see X-rays, we can't see radio waves, ultraviolet rays, pitches that are really, really low or really, really high out of our range we can't pick up, but a dog can pick them up, so they still exist. You know, color is a very, very tiny, tiny, tiny part of the physical spectrum of energy going around. So a lot of different ways that this stuff can be measured, as we'll talk about when we get to the different senses. So when we talk about thresholds, an absolute threshold is going from nothing to something. I have absolutely no stimulation whatsoever. And then suddenly I got a little bit. All right. So going from nothing to something. So absolute zero to something. All right. So vision is basically, I should be able to see a candle flame 30 miles away on a clear night. If it's absolute pitch darkness, absolutely clear black night, and somebody lights a candle in Hempstead, I should be able to pick that up. Problem with that is you can't really practically do that because it's never a pitch black night. There's stars in the sky, there's street lights on, there's a curvature of the earth, assuming you believe that the earth isn't flat, and all these other things. So again, mathematically that can be proven. Hearing, I can hear a watch ticking 20 feet away if there's really absolute no silence. And we notice that. You know, when there's no other competing stimuli, we pick up things a lot easier. When you're in a completely quiet classroom, that clock ticking is loud. When you're in a completely quiet classroom and someone behind you is chewing on a chip, that's loud. When you're in a completely quiet church and you try to undo that candy wrapper sounds incredibly loud because there's nothing else competing against it. Taste, 1 teaspoon of sugar and 2 gallons of water. Smell, drop of perfume in a 3-room house. Touch, a bee's wings 1 centimeter in my cheek. I should be able to pick that up 50% of the time. Now, again, there's some parts of our body that have more sensitivity. These have a higher or a lower threshold. Your fingers do because they're much more sensitive. I got a lot more nerve endings than, say, my shoulder doesn't have a lot of sensitivity that I'm going to pick up my fingers much more. So absolute threshold is going from nothing to something. And again, a lot of this also has to do on your experience on how we detect these signals. If you're someone who is musical, you can tell if somebody is in tune or out of tune. To me, it's just good singing or bad singing. I can't tell if something is in tune, in pitch, whatever. If you're an experienced parent, you can tell the difference when a baby's crying. Is that a I'm annoyed baby? Is that I'm a hungry baby? Is that I'm a tired baby? Is that I'm a changed baby? You can tell the difference. You know, when you have somebody, you know, bite into a cookie and go, ooh, that doesn't have enough nutmeg. What the hell is a nutmeg? It's a cookie. I don't know. You know, when somebody drinks a glass of wine and they're like, oh, it's 1973 from the Tuscany region of Italy. It's sour grape juice. You know, so again, based on your expertise, based on how many times you've done something, based on how motivated you are to see the difference in something, based on your level of fatigue, all of this is going to make you pick up different signals. Somebody you love, you're going to be more forgiving. You're not going to pick up those little annoyances, but then someone that you're annoyed with, you're going to pick up every little thing that they do that annoys you. These are the different signals we detect. And again, it's all based on our expertise and our experience, and also sometimes what we're motivated to look for. We take a look at this figure right here. What do you see? And for a lot of you, you don't see anything. But if I say, keep looking at it, keep looking at it, keep looking at it, some of you are now picking up what you see is a cow. Where's my cow? Well, here's the top of the head. There's an ear. There's an ear. There's an eye. There's an eye. There's a nose. There's a head. It's a big old cow. And then once you see the cow and I take the cow away and I put him there again, you see nothing but cow. Cow, cow, cow. You can't help but see cow because now you have the experience of seeing a cow. And even when I take it away, again, you just want to see the cow because that, then you want to eat more chicken. That's what you've experienced. And we are ingrained to see faces. When we see this painting of a mountain sunset, we want to see this nose, we want to see these eyes, we want to see this mouth. When we take a look at the profile, and it's an actual tiger here, and we look at the cheek, we want to see the nose, the mouth, and the eyes, and the striping of the tiger that's going on right there. We want to pick up faces when we're little babies, faces we want to pick up. We take a look at this couple right here, this picture, we see a man and a woman, and a lot of people right here see a head floating in the air, and they're like, oh my God, it's Jesus. It's a floating Jesus. Well, if you're a Christian, you see a floating Jesus. But if you're not, you're less likely to see it. Because again, if you want to prove your faith and your belief and you want to see a sign of whatever, you're going to see it. But in reality, that's not a floating head. This is in the foreground, that's in the background. What normally our brain would do is put these on two different planes instead of together, two different planes. But instead, my brain is putting it on the same plane because I want to see a nose, an eye, and the hair coming down the mouth and the beard of Jesus. But in reality, this is a man, his wife, and this is a little baby on top of his knee. You take a look, there's a big hat. It's a little chin right there. Those are his shoulders. This is him sitting on his white shirt, sitting on his dad's lap. This is the background of the little farm. But again, once you see it, it's hard to unsee that. And you see it all the time. People want to see Jesus on their iron, their ice cream, and their tortilla chip crucified in an orange on a banana on a power line, whatever else. You'll want to see it because it proves your belief. So sometimes we pick up things that aren't there. It's no different than, if you really are in love or you want someone to love you, you see love where maybe love isn't there, where maybe someone likes you. You like a girl and she smiles at you. You look at that as a come on because you want it to be more than what it is. And that affects how we perceive a lot of things. Now, some messages could be subliminal in what they are. Now, again, this gets a little bit of a weird rap. A subliminal message is something that you can pick up naturally less than 50% of the time. It goes below your absolute threshold 50% of the time. And typically you're not going to pick it up. But where subliminal messages kind of got a scariness to them was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where movie theaters are like, hey, we could get more people to drink soda or eat popcorn at the movies if we just flash hungry, eat popcorn, thirsty, drink soda, whatever, and then they'll buy more. And people thought this was true, even though study after study after study showed that it didn't work. But once people found out about it, then they started calling their congressman and going, oh, no, they're making me do things I don't want to do. The fact of the matter is if I put the words hungry, eat popcorn, you would never take that in. And it would never work. It just doesn't work. It's not enough for you to pick up. Now, this is different than priming. Priming is product placement. Priming is Marlboro paying millions of dollars to be in the Superman movie and him breaking out of that. And I'm really excited when I see Superman battling, what's his name who was put into the Zod, when battling Zod and the others in not in Gotham, but in Gotham is Batman and playing Metropolis. And I see this battle going on and I'm excited to see that. And then I'm excited and I put exciting with Marlboro, and then Marlboro suddenly makes me excited. That's priming, when you see Joey from Friends with a Diet Coke and then suddenly you're like, hey, wow, if you're already thirsty, you're going to be more thirsty for Diet Coke. But if you're not thirsty and if you're not a smoker, this has no impact on you. The soda has no impact on you if you're not thirsty. Anyway. So again, all it can do is it can sort of push you somewhere where you already were there. But priming doesn't work unless you were already thirsty. Marlboro doesn't work unless you were already a smoker. So if it's not there, these messages do nothing. So when stimuli are detectable less than 50% of the time, this is known as subliminal. Again, others are product placement and they're primers. This was the commercial in 1973, not commercial, but an ad that got a lot of people in trouble. And this was an ad for gin. And so what they decided to do was in the ice of the glass of gin right next to it are the letters SEX. I mean, you gotta want to see it, but it's there. And the idea was if I can tap into your hypothalamus and your want center for sex, remember the rat pushing the lever, then I could tie that want to your want for gin. That'll get you to buy gin. No, it won't. If I'm not a drinker, no ad for gin is going to make me drink. So you can prime me, but you can't subliminally make me do something I'm not naturally going to want to do anyways. A great example of this was a Canadian television station back in 1980 that said that we're going to take one of our most popular shows of the time and we're actually going to run a subliminal message. And they told people we're going to run a subliminal message during this show. And during this show, they flashed a subliminal message 352 times. 500 people wrote letters and responses, but none of them guessed the message. Half the people said they were hungry, they were thirsty, there were all these other weird things that I was suddenly feeling. But the subliminal message that was flashed was telephone now, lift the number. Not one person called. Nobody. So again, we're influenced by what we want to be influenced by, but what we think we want to hear, what we think we want to see. That's sort of what knocks us, not something out of the blue. Still, many believe it's a powerful advertising tool. 75% of Americans believe that companies use them. 55% of Americans still believe that they're an effective advertising tool. Well, if you think it's an effective advertising tool, it's more likely to be an effective advertising tool. So remember, subliminal messages will not make you do something you wouldn't normally do. The only impact that it can have is a priming impact that it might nudge you in a little bit of a way that of something that you were going to do anyways. You were already hungry. So watching Superman have a fight in Man of Steel at an IHOP restaurant, you know, and you get excited and the IHOP restaurant is going on, maybe it's going to make you want pancakes a little bit more, but you're already hungry. If you weren't hungry, there would be no desire to go to the IHOP. Okay, so they don't really work. Give you some examples of them right here. This is the KFC, Meet the Snackers. KFC Snackers would be a little $1 sandwich that they had. To remind you that it was $1, right here in the lettuce, there's Washington and part of a dollar bill. They put a dollar bill and the lettuce has no impact. Joe Cool, cigarettes. Hey, you want to be cool? You want to smoke cigarettes? Be manly, smoke cigarettes? His face is male genitalia. Axe body spray, Axe shampoo. You've seen all the commercials. You use the Axe and the women can't keep their hands off of you. Take a look at it. S-E-X. And Skittles are a berry. Really? Skittles, candy, really? We had to put that in there. But it's there. It's there. Now, a lot of people like to point to Disney movies and other movies, and they go, "Oh, there's a subliminal message." They're not subliminal messages. It's basically guys working in production, working in graphics, working in animation. They're like, "Hey, let's put something in there. It'll be funny." You know, the scene of Simba goes to the edge because his father, Simba, very disappointed with you, father. And then Mufasa goes away, hits the ground, all the leaves go, and they hit the baboon, wherever. And then if you pause it at one particular moment and you spell it out right here, you can see the letters S-E-X, but you got to want to see that. But this is going to make little kids, a little 7-year-old watching this going, I want to have a girlfriend now. You know, it's not going to happen. You know, it doesn't have any effect. These are just people seeing what they could get in. And it's no different than if you pause Who Framed Roger Rabbit at one particular slide, you can see Jessica Rabbit's underwear. If you pause The Rescuers at one particular moment, you can see a topless woman in like the 5th floor of in an alleyway. And there's penises all over the Little Mermaid movie. It's just really, really, those guys are kind of perverse. But again, it's not a subliminal message. It's just guys seeing what they can get in there. Well, let's assume guys. I would assume women would do that. Okay, so that's an absolute threshold. Nothing is something. Differential threshold is something to something else. Can you feel the difference between this and something else? For example, let me should have prepared this beforehand. This right here is a piece of plastic. It's a little tiny piece of plastic that if I put it on my hand, it does have some weight to it. And I can feel the weight of that plastic. Yet if I put this stapler in my hand that has a lot of weight to it and close my eyes and drop this, I could not feel the extra weight of the plastic because this is such a powerful stimulus. That's not going to make too much of a difference. You know, if somebody is lifting 100 pounds over their head and I put one more pound on there and it's now 101, they're not going to notice the difference between 100 and 101. You know, there's not enough of a difference. You know, me with the lights in here, if I turn this light right here, well, you can notice on the side of my face, but you know, if I change the light bulb from a 50 watt to a 75 watt, is there a noticeable difference? And that's a differential threshold. With light intensity, the lights would have to be an 8% higher. Weight, it'd have to be 2% higher. So somebody bench pressing 300 pounds, you put 302 on there, I'm not going to notice. You know, somebody carrying the groceries home, you got a bunch of bags and I drop a Snickers bar in there, you're not going to notice. I drop a gallon of milk in there, you're going to notice, okay? So this is the intent. And the more stimulus you have, the greater the intensity to change it. You know, I'm going to notice if I'm carrying 3 pounds, I'm going to notice 1 pound. But if I'm carrying 300 pounds, I'm not going to notice the 1 pound. The more stimulus, the more of a difference it's going to take in order for me to notice the difference. Because what I do most of the time is I adapt to it. My senses adapt to what's going on. All right. My clothes on my body, I notice that going on. If it gets darker, my pupils will become bigger. If it's bright, my pupils will become smaller. You jump into a pool and it's really, really cold, but after a while, the pool's water starts to feel a little bit warmer because you have adapted to it. I don't know why that's on there twice. Your wallet or your phone in your back pocket, after a while, you don't notice it's there anymore, and you adapt to it. A disagreeable odor. Why, I would walk into my son's bedroom and go, "Oh my God, what's that smell?" They're like, "I don't smell anything," because they're used to it. They're around it all the time. This is why our eyes are constantly moving around so that we don't get too locked in to that particular thing. This is a great example of sensory adaptation right here. If you stare at the little white dot, stare at the little white dot, stare at the little white dot, and continue to stare at the little white dot for about 30 seconds, your eyes are going to adapt to the motion going around and round and round and round again. And if I suddenly say, look away from the little white dot and stare at, say, the palm of your hand, so I'm staring and staring and staring and staring, and then suddenly I go, yep, the palm of my hand seems to move around. Now, if that didn't work for you, stare at the little white dot, stare at the little white dot, keep staring at the little white dot. A few more seconds there, a few more seconds there, a few more seconds there. And then I switch to this, and then you see movement going on there because your eyes got used to moving around, even though there's not movement happening there. Here's another example. It goes around and round and round and round this way. So we're going to the right. We're getting used to adapting to the right, going to the right. Now my eyes want to overcompensate to the other way, and we go that way. It's no different than being on a trampoline and going boing, 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 boing. Then you get off, and then your body wants to take your weight down. It's no different than being on a boat all day, going on the waves. You get off the boat, and your body still feels like it's going. That's the adaptation of your body to it. And if you can't adapt to it, that's why some people get seasick, because they can't adapt to that particular motion. Last thing that we're covering here is something called the Stroop effect. When I've got two stimuli competing with one another at the exact same time, it's going to take longer for me to process. If I had you read this list of words right here, and you went red, blue, orange, purple, orange, blue, green, red, purple, blue, purple, green, red, orange, blue, red, green, purple, orange, red, blue, green, red, blue, purple, orange, blue, red, green, purple, orange, red, blue. Easy enough to do. But now if I ask you to, instead of reading the words, just say the color out loud. And you go red, blue, orange, purple, orange, blue, green, red, easy, because they're the same. But once it starts to change, and then we come here, and then we go, it's green, it's red, it's purple, it's blue, it takes a little bit, because you want to go orange, blue. You want to naturally read the word because we're used to reading the word. Just the color is very difficult. Now, if I ask a 3-year-old to do this, just tell me the colors, it'd be easier for them because a 3-year-old can't read. They know colors, but they can't read. So there's not as much of a competing stimuli going on. So with the competing stimuli, it can take up to 50% longer to process the information, to read, spider, camel, bird, whatever. But then to switch those, it becomes a little bit harder. You're most likely to struggle with those tests. People who struggle with this test have a little bit harder if you don't have a lot of impulse control. If you're intoxicated, it becomes a little bit harder to do. This is also why most people have difficulty lying, because the truth is easy. Where were you last night? I was at a friend's house. That's the truth. That's what happened. It's easy to say, but if I don't want to admit that I was at that friend's house, where were you? I was at the mall, and I was shopping for some shoes. It takes a little bit of time. This can be overcome with hypnosis that plant the words to the suggestible mind, and the words are also gibberish, so it's easier. Preschool children, again, can excel at this. During the Cold War, this was actually used to out Russian spies. they would take someone who they suspected of being a Russian spy who's posing as an American, and they would go, what color is this? And they, you know, orange, purple, green, pretty easy. But for them, it'd be a little bit more difficult because they would know that this is Russian for orange and purple and green. It'd be a little bit harder for them to do. That wraps up lecture number 1 for you on sensation and perception. Next time, we'll take a look at the eye.